This lesson will be on 9-1, graphing quadratic equations. We're going to graph this quadratic equation by making a chart. So we'll be plugging values in for x and solving for y. We'll start with 0. When we plug 0 in, we have 0 squared times 2. When we plug 0 into negative 4x, we'd have negative 4 times 0. And then, of course, we have our minus 5. So our y value here is a negative 5. Now we'll plug in 1. 1 squared times 2. And we have negative 4 times 1. And then we have a minus 5. 2 minus 4 minus 5 gives us negative 7. Now let's plug in a negative 1. If we plug in a negative 1, we'll have negative 1 squared times 2. Negative 1 squared is 1 times 2 is still 2. Negative 4 times negative 1 will give us a positive 4. And we also have our negative 5. This will give us a positive 1. We can start plotting our points on our graph to see what our parabola or our quadratic equation will look like. Quadratic equations usually take the form, they look like parabola, they're called parabolas, and they look like this. They either open upwards or downwards. So 0, negative 5 will be right here. Then we have 1, negative 7. And then we have negative 1, 1. So far, our parabola or quadratic equation looks like this. We have to continue finding points to our right side over here so that we can see how our parabola shifts upward. So now let's plug in more positive values. So if we plug in 2, we'll have 2 squared, which is 4 times 2. That'll give us an 8. Then we'll have negative 4 times 2, which will give us a negative 8. And then we'll also have minus 5. 8 minus 8 minus 5 gives us negative 5. So at 2, negative 5, we have another point. Let's find one more value on the positive side. We'll plug in 3 now. 3 squared is 9 times 2 is 18. Negative 4 times 3 is a negative 12. And we also have minus 5. This will give us a positive 1. So at 3, positive 1, we'll have another point. And now we can finish graphing the rest of our parabola. When solving a quadratic equation, we're looking for the values where our parabola hits our x-axis. So here's our x-axis and here's our y-axis. We're looking for the values that it hits right here and right here. And we can estimate these, okay? So it looks like it's hitting at negative 1 or very close to negative 1 right here. And on our positive side right here, it looks like it's hitting at 3. So our answers for our quadratic equation by graphing the quadratic equation is negative 1 and positive 3. In example 2, we'll be graphing the parabola or a quadratic equation negative x squared plus 4x plus 3. So again, we'll be plugging values in for x, and we'll be solving for y. Negative x squared plus 4x plus 3. So when you plug values in for x, especially here, remember that this negative sign is outside of the squared symbol. So you're going to square x, and then you're going to add that negative sign to it, to whatever your answer is. So let's say you were plugging in a -1. A -1 squared is 1, but then you also have this negative sign outside of your x squared, so then it would become a -1. Let's start plugging in values. We'll start with 0. 0 squared is going to be 0. 4 times 0 is 0, and then we have plus 3. So we get 3 as our y value. Now let's plug in 1. 1 squared is 1, but remember we do have that negative sign on the outside of our x squared. Then we have 4 times 1, which is 4. Now we have our plus 3. This gives us 6. -1, +4, plus 3. Now let's plug in -1. A -1 squared is a +1. But we do have the negative sign outside of our x squared, so again we get a -1. Then we have 4 times -1. This gives us a -4. And then we have plus 3. This gives us a -2. Let's start graphing our quadratic equation now. So we'll start at 0, 3. Now we'll go to 1, 6. So we're going over 1 and up 6. Now -1, -2. So -1 and down 2. So what we can see for our parabola so far is this. But remember that a parabola looks something like this. It's either going to curl upwards or curl downwards. This particular one curls downwards, and we're seeing the left side of our parabola. So we'll have to find more values on the right side so that we can finish our drawing. So let's start plugging in more positive values. We'll go and plug in 2 now. If we have 2 squared, it would be 4. And remember, we have the negative sign on the outside. If we have 4 times 2, that gives us 8. And we have plus 3. All of those combined give us 7. And now we can graph that point out at 2 over 2, up 7 would be right here. So it's just continuing up. So we'll have to go again and find another positive value, 3. 3 squared is 9, and we do have the negative sign outside of our x squared. We have 4 times 3, which is a plus 12, and we have a positive 3. This gives us 6. So if you notice now, we're back at a y value of 6. We've now seen where our parabola goes to the top and comes back down. Let's find one more value so that we can finish drawing our parabola. Let's plug in 4. 4 squared is 16, and we do have that negative sign. 4 times 4 gives us a positive 16, and we have plus 3. Again, notice how we have another 3 as a y value, but this is at 4, 3. And now we can draw the rest of our parabola, which looks like this. When solving a quadratic equation by graphing, we're looking for the values of our quadratic where it hits our x-axis. So, where is this parabola hitting our x-axis? If you notice, it's hitting at right here and right here. And we just have to say what those values are, and if we have to estimate them, that's okay. So on the left side, it's hitting our x-axis at a negative half. Right here, it's hitting our x-axis at 4.5. These are our two answers for solving our parabola, or for solving our quadratic equation.